Hello and welcome back to the Screw the System channel. I'm Beau Carnes and today's video is a longer presentation. My new book, Do the Work You Love, launched yesterday. That's February the 11th, 2020. And tomorrow, February the 13th, I'm giving a talk in a bookstore in Covent Garden. It's Watkins. This book is published by a company called Watkins Media, and they own a bookstore in Covent Garden in London. So I'm going to go ahead and give a talk on doing the work you love tomorrow night. But obviously a lot of you guys, virtually all of you, probably won't be there, so I wanted to give you guys the content as well. So this is my talk on doing the work you love. Before I begin though, it's probably worth saying that it was a complete accident that I ended up writing this book. I never meant to call it Do the Work You Love either. I thought that way back in 2012 when I published my first book, which was called Screw the System at the time, now called Escape the System, I thought that would be it. I thought I'd be one and done. This book was going to be so phenomenal that I was going to live off the royalties for the rest of my life. Well, obviously rather naively I had that thought, and clearly it didn't happen. But part of what I was doing to promote the book was obviously writing blog posts, writing guest blog posts, and making these YouTube videos. And it was on one of these videos, I think back in 2015, and I'll leave a link for the exact video below so you can check it out if you want to. I think it was 3 tips from Escape the System was the name of the video. Anyway, I had a comment on that video from a subscriber. He was called Jared the Skater at the time, then changed his username to Alea Vijnana and then Elexair3R. I can't keep up with how many times he changes his username. Anyway, that's not the point. The point was that he left a really interesting comment. Now, this guy was from the Netherlands. He was about 19. He just left school and he was about to go into university. And he was faced with a bit of a dilemma. He wasn't sure about what to do. Should he go to university, take a course he wasn't particularly interested in, probably go into debt having to fund himself, and then risk the chance that when he left university, he would have to get a job just to pay off this debt? Or should he pursue one of his passions? I think he listed them as music, psychology, fast cars, but he wasn't really sure how he was ever going to create an income for any of these passions. So he was in a bit of a dilemma, and there was a question he left on his comment. I mean, he wrote about 7 or 8 paragraphs, and towards the end he wrote the sentence, "How do I create an income without working a boring job?" And when I read that, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. I thought, I know, I can answer this guy's question. Initially, I just thought I'd answer it with a blog post. I'd just write 1,500 words on my website. As I was writing that, I realized that I was going to have to dedicate a lot more words. The subject was a lot more in depth than 1,500 words. So then I thought, okay, I'll turn it into a 6,000 word free PDF that I give away as an incentive for joining my website. Again, I got halfway through this and thought, no, I'm not even 1/8 of the way to covering this subject. So then it became a 12,000 word small ebook, which I was going to sell for $1 on Amazon. But again, got to about 10,000 words and realized that this subject needs proper attention. And as a result of that, I invested my full time and effort into it, and we ended up with Do the Work You Love. But as I said, it wasn't initially called Do the Work You Love. It was initially called How to Create an Income Without Working a Boring Job. I was essentially answering this guy from the Netherlands, his question. I wanted to break his question down, and I'll do that right now. And really, there are 2 areas. Well, there are 3 areas. I'm only going to cover 2 today in the talk. There are 3 areas in the book. First area is finding your passion. Second area is figuring out how you're going to get from A to B, which is idea to making an income from your passion. And I'm going to give you guys a quick insight into that today. Now, by all means, this talk is not fully comprehensive. I will leave a link for the book in the description below. If you want to get the full big picture, then obviously you want to read the book. But for now, I can give you a bit of a taste. I can also give you some points which are definitely going to help you on your journey to doing the work you love. So, as I was researching this book, I realized that this problem extended far beyond the comment I got from the guy in the Netherlands. He wasn't an isolated incident. I was doing some research and I came across this interesting statistic in a 2013 Right Management survey that 81% of the employed US workforce reported being uninspired by their job. And that was a hell of a lot of people. That's a lot of people having to be somewhere they don't want to be, doing things they don't want to do. So I thought, this is a lot of people. And when I researched further, I found out that some of the complaints about employed conventional jobs are the commute, having to spend 2 hours of your day going forwards and backwards to work, which is essentially dead time in perhaps a cramped and uncomfortable environment. Also having to report to bosses or supervisors who think that they're beneath you and treat you with a lack of respect. Perhaps above it all, though, is what can be the meaninglessness of modern work. We feel like we're working for no greater purpose than to receive our monthly paycheck. So I realized that this was a dilemma or an experience that many people had, no matter what their age. The guy from the Netherlands, he was just finished school, but you may well be 30, 40, 50. If you've spent years and years in a job you don't enjoy, you will want to find some way to escape. But the question is, what do you move to? And that's what I want to help you identify now. First part of my book deals with how to find your passion. And we're going to go through a brief exercise now to help you guys do that. So what I want you to do is write down between 5 or 10 ideas for a business idea, a hobby or skill, or a cause, anything that you're passionate about. Don't worry if it doesn't actually lead to a definite job. Just write down something you are passionate about. Ideally between 5 and 10. If you can't get 5 or 10, 3 or 4 will do, two will even do. Just try to brainstorm as many ideas as you can. Now I want you to put these ideas to the test. What do I mean by that? Well, in my book there is a tool called the Dream Job Chart, and that helps you write down, so first of all you write down your ideas, then it helps you measure your ideas out of 10 against 4 different criteria. And these criteria are an enjoyment rating, a fulfillment rating, a length of time to master rating, and finally a potential to monetize. So you score each one of these ideas out of 10, then get an overall score out of 40, and hopefully gain some clarity on what passion you might pursue. Okay, to give you guys an example, make this more understandable for you, let's take a look at my ratings. Now this is from my book, I'm going to read it. This is from 2002 when I left university. Now I hadn't created the Dream Job Chart by then, but these are the options I was considering back then, and I've subsequently now gone back and scored them accordingly to give you guys an idea of how this works. Right, first off, on my list of potential passions when I was at a stage when I was clueless about what I was going to do was becoming a pro tennis player. And this had an enjoyment rating of 10, a fulfillment rating of 8, length of time to master 2, potential to monetize only 1, giving a total of 21 out of 40. Now the reason the length of time to master and potential to monetize was so low is because I'd only played maybe 1,000 hours tennis up to that point. And it's well researched that, it's well known and researched that you need to put in 10,000 hours or 10 years to become an expert at anything. So I was light years away from ever being able to really monetize this passion. And it's such a small percentage of tennis players that ever get to actually make a living from it. That's why I gave it such a low score. So then we moved down to my next option, which was becoming an author, which I gave an enjoyment rating of 8, fulfillment 10, length of time to master 4, potential to monetize 5. So that scored a little bit higher, 27. Now I'm not going to break down every single option that give you the scores for every single option that I wrote down, but I will tell you what else was on the list. Then we had actor, then we had politician, tennis coach, hypnotherapist, school teacher, estate agent, and scriptwriter for films. My number one choice was tennis coach, which had an enjoyment rating of 7, fulfillment of 8, length of time to master 9, potential to monetize 8, total score of 32. And I did end up following that. Now, the reason why the length of time to master and the potential to monetize was so high was because, as I said, I'd done 1,000 hours. I knew I was at a level where I could coach beginners already. I just needed to take the qualification. And it just so happened in tennis coaching industry in that time in the UK, there was a week-long course that you could take. It was essentially the back door into the tennis coaching world, which I took, got my qualification, and began working, I think, 3 weeks after that as a tennis coach. So that's why you would score high on length of time to master and potential to monetize. So hopefully, with my explanation, and it would be a lot easier if you buy the book and go through it as well, that might give you some clues on how you can start to score your potential passions. Please note also that, you know, some of the things I was listing down there were sort of wacky ideas. They were crazy. How was I ever going to become a pro tennis player? Well, I mean, why was I writing down actor when I hadn't done a single acting class in my life, or script writer for films? Well, the whole point is that these things you write on the list have to be things that will inspire you, that you're passionate about. After I left university, I had my degree in politics, but it would have been no good if I'd written down lawyer or accountant or working in a business at a corporation on my list, even if the time to master and potential to monetize were quite high, because the enjoyment and fulfillment rating would have been so low, it would have been absolutely pointless. So don't feel you have to hold back when writing down your ideas. Nobody's judging you, and you shouldn't judge yourself. Just write down as many as you can, ideally between 5 and 10. But knowing what your passion is only half the equation. Now you've got to figure out how you're going to get from A to B. How are you going to get from simple idea to being able to make a living doing it? Before I explain that, I just want to mention about the dream job chart. Don't feel you have to pick the one with the highest score, and don't feel you just have to pick one. You may be able to combine a few of them to then work on your bigger dream. So what I mean by that is, in my example, I combined tennis coaching and hypnotherapy was my platform to then shoot at becoming a best-selling author. So that's how I used it. I don't want you feeling like you have to choose the one with the highest score. You don't. It helps you weed out the ideas that aren't going to work, and maybe select 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 that are going to give you a path to making creating an income from your passion. Okay, right, so you have an idea now. I'm assuming you have an idea or a few ideas. How are you going to get to the point of being able to make a living from your passion? Now I'm going to present you with 3 paths to doing this, and the path you choose, the one you take, will depend on 4 criteria. These are your financial situation, your current family situation, what your levels of self-motivation are like, and also your tolerance for risk. We're going to start with the first path in the book, which is the adventurous path. This basically means from as of this moment, or as of the point you are clear on what your passion is, you quit your job or hand in your notice and begin working full-time on your passion. Now, the benefit of doing this is complete focus, and you're going to find that the number one factor in determining your success and making a living from your passion is your focus. How strong is it? What kind of momentum can you build up? Now, by following the adventurous path, there is nothing stopping you from dedicating 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours a day, every single day if you wanted to, towards this passion, towards the learning your skill, towards researching your product, towards making contacts, whatever it might be that's going to help you to be successful. You've got all this time that you can dedicate towards it. Now, the flip side of this, the downside, is obviously you're in a precarious financial situation. You've just quit your job, so at least initially you don't have any money coming in. And for some people, this can be psychologically damaging. They can fail to take advantage of all the time they've got and the ability to focus because they can't focus on what they're actually doing. They're afraid about where is the money, when is the money coming in. Another potential downside to this is you may struggle to motivate yourself. In Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, he talks about leaving his corporate job. I think he was in his mid-20s at the time, following the adventurous path, deciding that he was going to become a successful blogger, but spending the first 3 months just playing video games. And if you're not used to motivating yourself, or you need a deadline to motivate you, then it can be hard. Now, a lot of people will tell you that following the adventurous path is a naive decision and it's not going to work. But there are lots of people who use it and are successful. One example is Brad Pitt. Now, he's got a really interesting story. He left university, was at the University of Missouri, with 2 weeks and 2 credits short of gaining his full degree in journalism. He decided that he was inspired to become an actor, so he left, drove halfway across the United States towards Hollywood and began his journey towards becoming an actor. Now, loads of people would have said to him that was such a crazy and irresponsible decision. Why couldn't he just sit it out for 2 more weeks, for goodness sakes? And then he's got his degree, he's got it in his back pocket, he's got his security. But the people who say this are actually missing out on something. Part of the effectiveness of the adventurous path is the fact that you don't give yourself a plan B. And without a plan B, your subconscious realizes that you have to make this work. There's no turning back. It's this option and you've got to make it happen. Now, in Brad Pitt's case, he spent a few years doing odd jobs like driving a limousine for strippers. He dressed up as a big chicken in a chicken costume, advertising a local fried chicken chain. He also worked small roles in sitcoms like Dallas. And it only probably took him about 5 years, and while he was doing all that, he was training under the legendary acting mentor Roy London. Took him 5 years to get his breakthrough role in Thelma and Louise, and from then on he became one of the most preeminent actors of his generation. So the adventurous path can work, but the questions you have to ask yourself is, how good are you at tolerating risk? How much money you have saved up to live on? And can you motivate yourself? If you want a less risky option, then perhaps go for the strategist path. Now, this basically means that you don't quit your job, but you look to try to cut back on the amount of hours you're working. So you could either do this by possibly asking your boss if you could go down to 30 hours, or maybe leaving your job and finding a part-time role in a similar industry. Also, the strategist path is great for people who have skills that can be easily transferred over to freelancing. So maybe you could leave your job, but still do the same thing that you're doing, but on a freelance basis, build up 10, 15 clients a week, whatever it is you need to make enough money, and then dedicate the rest of your time to working on your bigger dream. So ideally, that would be 20 hours a week. And I mean 20 hours a week working on your passion. I don't know how many hours you'll need to work to make sure that you make the basic minimum so that you can live on, but then the rest of the time you can dedicate to your passion. And the great advantage of this is you've still got money coming in. So there's not that immediate risk factor. You may not be as stressed. You can work feeling relatively more comfortable as you work on your passion. The downside to this though, and this is the path I followed, so I know this very well. As I mentioned, I went tennis coach, hypnotherapy, author. That was the route I took. But what I experienced was that a lot of the time I felt like I was juggling different roles, and that I didn't benefit from the power of focus. You know, if I was particularly busy with my tennis and hypnotherapy, it might be 2 or 3 days before I sat down to write. And then when I did, sometimes it would take me an hour or an hour and a half to really pick up the thread of what I was writing. So it's not the most efficient way to chase your passion. You find that you're switching, your mind is constantly switching between different things, especially if also, you know, if you've got family commitments or relationships. It can be hard to build that momentum. But it does work for a lot of people. One example of someone who's used the strategist path successfully is Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, his big dream was to become a Hollywood actor, Hollywood superstar, and to help him, his platform, his strategy was he got income from bodybuilding sales. This is all in the 1970s. He got money from a mail order business. He got money from a property business, which he owned, and a construction business, which he ran with his gym partner. So all of these different things, and this is the great strength of the strategist path, they give you a platform for unlimited tries at attempting to be successful at making money from your passion. Now, Arnold's first film was 1969's Hercules in New York, and it was so terrible that he took a long time to transition and develop his acting skills, and also a long time for him to be taken serious in the Hollywood industry. It wasn't until 1982's Conan the Barbarian that he really broke through and became a full-time actor. So that's 13 years. But that was okay, because he had, throughout that time, he had all of these other things providing him an income. So what I'm trying to say is you just get an unlimited shots at being successful at realizing your dream if you follow this path and if you can keep that basic income coming in. Right, finally, what do you do if you have no other options? What if you can't quit your job? What if you can't even scale back on the number of hours you do? Well, the option for those without any options is the grinder's path. This means you stay at your current job, but you try to work an extra 20 hours a week on top of that in your free time. This basically means you're going to have to become a master of time management. I would highly recommend an hour of work before you go to your day job, then try to fit an hour in maybe in your commute or your lunch break. That gives you 2 hours a day, then try to do 10 hours at the weekend. It is possible, and the benefit of doing this is obviously there's zero financial risk. You don't have to worry about anything, and with a clear head, sometimes you can make great decisions and actually progress quite quickly when following the grinder's path. The downside is obviously burnout. And for that reason, I don't recommend following this path. In the book, I say don't follow it for more than a year to 18 months. Maybe use it as a way to save up money so that you can then quit your job and go at your passion full time. But if you do pursue it for any longer than that, you're risking the possibility of damaging your health or maybe your relationships. And a famous example, or actually in this case, a not so famous example of somebody who was successful at making a living from their passion by following the grinder's path is a guy called Beau Carnes. Now, unlikely you'll have heard of him, but I'll leave a link in the description below about his article which went viral on Medium. He talks about how he gained a second degree and 5 developer certifications in just 1 year. This was all while working a full-time job as a teacher and having a family to raise. This guy is a master of time management and scheduling. And in the article, and also in my book, you get to see this in-depth schedule he created for himself so that he could work 20 hours a week on his passion on top of all the other things I mentioned. And he was successful. It didn't take him, he moved from being a teacher to being a full-time coder. He didn't do that in a space of a year, but he achieved the degree and the 5 certifications in the space of 1 year, which is a pretty incredible achievement. So you may want to look at that if you're planning to follow that path. Okay, that pretty much brings my video to an end. I've discussed finding your passion. I've discussed the path you might take towards making a living from it. Now, I understand and appreciate that everybody has different circumstances and conditions, and you may not be able to begin eventually. Well, if that's the case, I'm just going to urge you to do something. If you can't do 20 hours a week, okay, fair enough. What about 30 minutes a day? Everybody can do 30 minutes a day, and you can achieve a lot more than you think with 30 minutes a day. With just 30 minutes a day, let's say for example your passion was to become a full-time writer. If you were to write at the very modest pace of just 150 words per hour for 30 minutes every single day for a year, you will have written by the end of it 54,600 words, which conveniently is pretty much the length of my book. So it's something to think about. You know, you don't have to do a lot. 20 hours a week would be great. 30 minutes of a day, fantastic. Just do something, because you don't want to end up in a position where your song goes to the grave with you. Now, what am I talking about here? I'm quoting David Henry Thoreau from his 18th or 19th century book, Walden. It was actually written, as I said, 19th century, but I can't think of a better quote to sum up how we live our lives in the 21st century. It goes like this: most men lead lives of quiet desperation and go to the grave with the song still in them. Now, the quiet desperation obviously in part comes from being one of that 81% who don't enjoy the work they do. And with your adult life, probably the most amount of time you're going to spend is at work. That's where the quiet desperation comes in. The going to the grave with the song still in you is about not releasing your passion. not getting a chance to pursue it, not making money from it, not making your living from it. And your song doesn't have to be musical. It could be a product you need to create, a message you want to share with the world, or just an expression of who you are. But do not go to the grave with it still inside you. You still have time to release it. And if you can't follow my instructions to the letter, then 30 minutes a day is a great way to start. Okay, so I hope this video has helped in some way. I hope it's inspired you, but I hope it's given you a clearly identifiable path to follow. There will be more videos, and please do support the channel by sharing this video or liking it, subscribing. If you're interested in buying my book, I will leave the link in the description below. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.